We are going to keep with the same pattern we've been going with the last several weeks, and so we're going to only have about 15 or 16 more minutes of teaching. Then we're going to worship. Then we're going to pray. We're going to follow that pattern, because I just believe that if we want to see changed lives, if we want to see a changed city, we're going to have to be people of prayer. We cannot just be people of learning. That just makes us scientific or smart. We want to be people who pray, who talk to God. So this evening, we are kind of turning that corner again. We're in the book of Exodus. If you didn't get a sheet, just kind of wave your hand. Someone has them. They are somewhere. Wayne has them. Thank you, Wayne. Okay, does anyone need one? Okay, we're going to start in Exodus chapter 20. We're going to read all the way, verse 1 through 11. And this is literally just the first 4 commandments that God gave, and then we're going to break it down a little bit. Then God gave the people all these instructions. I am the Lord your God who rescued you from the land of Egypt, the place of your slavery. You must not have any other God but me. You must not make for yourselves an idol of any kind or an image of anything in the heavens or on the earth or in the sea. You must not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God who will not tolerate your affections for any other gods. I lay the sins of the parents upon their children. The entire family is affected, even children in the 3rd and 4th generation of those who reject me. But I lavish, guys, say lavish. I love that word. I lavish unfailing love for 1,000 generations on those who love me and obey my commands. You must not misuse the name of the Lord your God. The Lord will not let you go unpunished if you misuse his name. Remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath day of rest, dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, and any foreigners living among you. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and everything in them, but on the 7th day he rested. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy. So tonight we're gonna walk through, and we're gonna stop where we stop. Literally, if we have to stop and pick it up next week, that's what we do. I love this breakdown. So since we're really we're exactly mid-spot of the book of Exodus, I loved Skip Heitzig explained the book of Exodus in 3 movements, 3 breakdowns. He talked about the first 12 chapters are domination by Egypt. That's what we saw, domination by Egypt. Tim Mackey, I'll go through his in a minute. And then he describes chapters 13 through 18 as liberation from Egypt. We are at the end of liberation. The pinnacle moment in the book of Exodus is now. It is the people of God at the base of a mountain. And Moses remember we talked 2 weeks ago, Moses climbs a mountain. And it's this moment where it is, I think it was where you would have 2 circles that would cross. And that center part, is there a term for that? A Venn diagram. I don't want to sound like a vice presidential person. But the Venn diagram, when 2 circles connect and that center part, I believe that is what that moment, when Moses is on the mountain and he is communing with God and God's spirit, God's presence, God is speaking to Moses. I believe that was this hot spot. I can't think of a better word, a hot spot of God's glory, God's presence, where heaven touches earth. And if you are interested, you may like this podcast. I love Tim Mackey's The Bible Project podcast. And he has this entire series in his podcast about the cosmic mountain. Like, he's so heady. Don't listen to it at anything above 1.2 speed or you'll miss it. So, and then the last 21 chapters, Skip Heitzig really talks about revelation after Egypt. So these next 20 chapters, once we get past chapter 20, the next 20 chapters really are God establishing a way that he wants his people to live. They are out of Egypt. It's going to take 40 years to get Egypt out of them. And now God is going to establish within their hearts, this is the way I want you to live. This is my way. Tim Mackey, though, on the right side, he describes the three movements of Exodus as the road out, the road through, and the road in. I loved that. That made sense to me. The road out, the road through, and the road in. So let's do this. Let's look back at verse 1 and 2. Preface to the covenant. Literally, I had all these things typed up. And then I thought, you know what? If I have my thoughts typed up, they're not going to give me their thoughts. So let's review one more time, verse 1 and 2. I want to hear, what are your observations? What are the things that you see? What stands out to you? Circle, mark it. It's your paper. Then God gave the people all the instructions. Let's do this for a second. I want you to land on every word. Like when you really want to study a passage, actually let your eyes land on every word and think through all of them. So listen again. Then God gave all the people all these instructions. I am the Lord your God. Why is it important to let your eyes land on the word Lord there? It's all capitalized. If we see big L, little O, little R, little D, that's just Lord, like the Lord of the manor, Lord. Someone is Lord over something. But if we see uppercase L, O, R, D, all uppercase, we know that that is God. That is God's, who he is, his name. He says, I am the Lord your God who rescued you from the land of Egypt, the place of your slavery. Brent, do you mind grabbing a microphone and doing your little running thing? Because I want to make sure everyone can speak and be heard. What observations do you see in those first two verses? The preface to the covenant.
He doesn't go all the way back to Genesis. He's keeping this very close to the lives they've lived, their experiences with him, when he's talking about who he is.
Good. Okay, he's reminding them what he's done. Yeah. He's reminding him of what he's done. What else? You guys are quiet tonight. Yeah. Lonnie, what are you noticing? I know you're observing. You're just being kind and letting other people go first. What are you noticing, hun?
That God is saying, I'm giving you these instructions, and this is who I am. So listen up.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else before I rattle off my thoughts? Chloe, what do you see? Oh, that's good. Chloe said he didn't just say, I'm dad. He said, I'm your dad. That's good, Chloe. That's good. He makes it personal. Any other thoughts? Yeah. Oh, that's good, Jordan. Yeah. The idea that rules are boundaries, but that insinuates that boundaries are bad. Don't you like having boundaries for Hudson in the backyard when he goes to play? A fence is a safety thing, isn't it? I like that. Let's look through this. Let's walk through it. Then God gave. Whose commandments are they? They're God's commands. They're not Moses' commandments. So later on, when people are mad at Moses, Moses can say, hey, I didn't make the rules. Me as a preacher, when I tell you what God's word says, and if you don't like it, I'm so sad. Sorry, not sorry, right? Then God gave the people, all these instructions. He says, I am the Lord your God. He says, I rescued you. He's telling them, he's giving his credentials too, isn't he? He's saying, this is who I am, I'm the Lord, and this is what I've done. Those are huge credentials. I set you free. You're at the base of this mountain because of me. Thank you very much. Like, this is pretty amazing what he's doing. Here was my thoughts. Know where you're going, where you've come from, and the ground you have covered. Remember, God is saying, remember who you were And even in chapter 19, remember God uses terms of like remember the eagle's wings. He has covered them, he has sheltered them and protected them. And God's starting, before he goes into the rules, he reminds them of the relationship. Listen that close. Before God tells you, these are the rules, he reminds you, this is the relationship we have. You are free because of my love for you. You're free because I am the Lord your God. So when I give you rules, can you remind yourself that I don't do anything willy-nilly and I don't make arbitrary rules just to punish you. I am the Lord your God and I loved you enough to set you free. So when you hear the rules that I'm going to give to our guy Moses, remember who I am. I'm the God who loved you. I'm the God who set you free. I loved this thought. Learn from your past. Let it be your guidepost, never a hitching post. Isn't that a good thought? Let your past be a guidepost. It guides me, but I'm not hitched to that. Sandra, you don't let your past be a hitching post, do you? You're not going to stay stuck in that place. You have not stayed stuck in that place. You have used that as a guiding point in your life, but you're not tethered to that past anymore. You're a new person. God lists these things. So let's look now at the principles of the covenant. There's two parts. As we read these, if you notice, there's two parts. The first four are vertical. These first four parts, the first four commandments that God gives are all vertical. Vertical goes up and down, and if you've ever struggled to remember vertical versus horizontal, a V goes up and down. That's the only way I remembered it as a kid. Vertical. The first four are all about my relationship to God. So what would that mean the last six are? Horizontal. The last six are God giving rules and guidelines for the relationship that he wants his people to have with one another. I apologize, I forgot to print this on cardstock too. I will not do that again. Let's sum it all up. Here's a good summary statement. God expects supreme devotion. God expects. I should have said God deserves. God deserves supreme devotion to him and sincere affection to each other. Supreme devotion to him and sincere affection for others. So now we've got 3 minutes and we might cover the first commandment. And I don't even care. I think we're going to enjoy walking through this. The first commandment, verse number 3, remember what it says. We're going to recognize the one true God. So I just kind of put a sentence behind it. Warren Wiersbe, in his commentary on Exodus, he kind of summed it up, and I was like, I like what Warren Wiersbe said, so I just recognize one true God. Let's read it one more time. You must not have any other God but me. I just don't know. Like, I can't say much more than that. Like, that's pretty simple, isn't it? You cannot have any other God but me. And that's true because every other God is fake and false, right? Second commandment. This one's longer. So let's reread it again. Kind of break it down as we read it. The second one is, like, God includes a lot of details in the second one. The first one, boom, one sentence. But the second one, notice the different pieces and parts. You must not make for yourself an idol of any kind or an image of anything in the heavens or on the earth or in the sea. I think he knew that their hearts were prone to worship the sun, the moon, the stars. Like, guys, don't we do this? Like, this is our culture. Sun, moon, star people. Like, we're all about what are the signs? Astrology, yeah, see how much I know. But God is saying, like, don't make an idol even of those things. You must not bow down to them or worship them. Here's why. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God who will not tolerate your affection for any other gods. And now he's going to list a qualification here. He says, I lay the sins of the parents upon their children. I want to know, do you struggle with that verse like I do? You do. I struggle with that verse. And I'm okay with struggling with that verse. I'm not going to pretend to you, if there's a verse I don't like, I'm not going to pretend that I love it. So I don't love it. But here's what again, Warren Wiersbe, I love he's just such a practical writer. Here's what he said. I even put the statement here because I know that in other parts of Scripture, it specifically says that God will not punish the children for the sins of their father. But here, it looks like he's saying, I will punish the children for the sins of their father. What is it, God? Listen to what Warren Wiersbe said. He says, God is so serious about receiving exclusive worship and love that he punishes those who refuse to obey him. God doesn't punish the children and grandchildren for someone else's sin. And these are the verses that I'm citing where he says specifically, I will not. So Exodus 24:16, Ezekiel 18:4. But he says the sad consequences of ancestral sins can be passed from generation to generation, and innocent children suffer because of what their parents or grandparents have done. Isn't that true? Have you seen that in your own family? I've seen it in my family where the sins of one generation, it is taught, it is modeled, it is picked up and learned by the younger generation. What one generation does in moderation, the next generation will always do in excess. We see this happen, and some of you may be products of that, where you've seen that cycle in your family where this was my family, teenage pregnancy. This one got pregnant young, the child got pregnant young, her child got pregnant young, boom, boom, boom. Like, this was just learned behavior. It is not necessarily God saying, you got pregnant when you were 15, guess what? I'm going to punish you by making your daughter get pregnant at 15. It wasn't necessarily that. It is that behaviors are picked up. They're learned. When they're modeled for us. Look what it says, though. It says, in Bible times, it wasn't unusual for 4 generations to live in the same extended family and thus have greater opportunity to influence and affect one another. At the same time, the godliness of ancestors can help to bring blessing to succeeding generations. I appreciated this take on it, the way that Warren Wiersbe even lays that out. And even if you notice, all those times where it says up to the 4th generation, this all of a sudden made sense to me because they were a communal people. It very much like Hispanics are communal people. You will have children, you will have 3 and sometimes 4 generations living in one house. I think that's beautiful. And this was very much what the biblical time was like. And we're going to stop right there. Oh, but first, let me just do the 2 blanks. The first commandment tells us who to worship. That's what it does. The first one says, this is who you worship. The second commandment tells us how to worship. How are we going to worship the Lord our God? And we're going to stop there. We'll pick up at the 3rd commandment next Wednesday. Here's what I'd like us to do. I'd like us to worship. I'm going to keep reminding you this week after week because I need to remind myself. Before I go to the Lord in prayer and ask anything of him, I want to worship him. Yeah, come on up. Before I pour my heart out to him, I want to pour out my praise to him. I'll tell you this, I have to really work at training my brain. My brain often is like a pinball machine, just pinging from this to that to that. So I'm going to encourage you, force yourself. We are big grown-up people. We have done hard things in our life. We can worship the Lord for 2 songs. And I'm going to encourage you to press in. Everything that pops in your brain, shove it out and sing to the Lord. If during the song you don't want to sing and you just want to tell the Lord what you think of him and how much you worship him, do that. If you want to walk around, if you want to kneel, if you want to stand, do that too. But for 2 songs, we are just going to focus all of our energies and attention on worshiping the Lord. So if you're able to stand, would you stand with me as we begin? Lord Jesus,